Avengers, the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Ryan Coogler from Fruitvale Station and Creed fame. When this movie once again stars Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. This movie takes place after the events of Civil War, where the Black Panther has to go back to Wakanda to take the throne in order to become king of Wakanda, and dealing with the conflicts of that, and also being the Black Panther, and also trying to deal with this latest person named Erik Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who is trying to stir up some trouble in the Wakandan kingdom. I didn't know anything about Black Panther before Civil War came out, just that it was a guy who dressed up in a Black Panther costume. After seeing Civil War and doing more research on who Black Panther is as a character, I was getting really excited to see this film. Also, I was getting really excited to see what Ryan Coogler could do with this film, because he went from a low-budget independent film, Fruitvale Station, to Rocky spin-off Creed, to Marvel movie. That's amazing. That's one heck of a stride for him if you really think about it, especially considering his age. That's amazing. And one thing I think Ryan Coogler does very well as the director of this film is perfectly capture the civilization of Wakanda. You see the great visual effects that capture the city and all the buildings that it has and the future tech that all look very good, visually appealing, but then you also have the culture itself, all the costume designs and the actual set design. The world itself, when you go to it, feels lived in. In fact, it feels like they could explore more of it. It feels like they just kind of scratched the surface of what they could show in Wakanda, and that's something that is very cool to me. Going to see this new world in this film and feeling like you've been a part of it, but you can still learn so much more about it. And of course, it also helps that visually it just looks so vibrant, so unique. I just love that kind of visual flair that was in this film, and I think Ryan Coogler did a very good job with that. Another thing I really liked about Ryan Coogler directing this film is the action sequences. They're very entertaining. There's a couple moments, in fact, that are quite brutal, more brutal than you might expect to see in a Marvel film. And you have those over-the-top kind of action scene moments that work because it fits into the universe that they've set up, and it's all really entertaining and very well done. But then you'll also have those few action scenes, like for example, there's one scene that takes place near the middle of the film on the side of this hill with this waterfall that I thought was at first going to be like, alright, let's see what they have, and then it just gets kind of brutal as it goes on, like, oh my gosh, that is intense filmmaking. But what makes it even more intense besides just the filmmaking is also the performances in it. In that sequence, you recognize the character drama going on, and also you recognize what's at stake emotionally for these characters. So not only is it just good for Ryan Coogler as just an action director, but it also works very well for him as a character writer. And I think that's why a lot of the action scenes work for me, is that you're thinking about the drama and the stakes of the characters throughout, which is something that we're kind of lacking in a lot of other action films. Not necessarily comic book films, because these movies are usually a lot of fun, but you also have some other action movies that are just kind of distracting and you don't really think about the characters. And Black Panther, I think, really exceeds at making you think about the characters. And T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, him coming back, of course, he was very good in this film. In fact, I think definitely better than where he was in Civil War. And I loved him in Civil War. He was excellent. But in this film, he goes through a very surprising arc, at least for me, as far as recognizing the sins of the past, and kind of accepting that so that he can move forward and be a better king and be a better Black Panther. And that was something that I really appreciated in this, and I think it was something that Chadwick Boseman really captured very well. At first he's kind of stoic, trying to uphold this kind of peaceful kind of king image, but there are certain moments where dramatically he has to kind of break out, and I think Chadwick Boseman did a very good job playing it. I'm not sure how his performance in Infinity War is going to go, but I think that's going to be very hard topping what he delivered in this film. I wanted to talk about Black Panther first as a character though, because surprisingly, even though I liked him, and I like how they wrote him, and the movie is called Black Panther, he's kind of the least interesting character, surprisingly. Like, for example, Lupita Nyong'o's character Nakia, and also Denis Guerreri, sorry if I mispronounced that, as Okoye. Okoye is the general of the Wakandan army, and Nakia is a war dog, as they label her, and also a past flame of T'Challa. Both of these characters are a lot of fun. They're also really badass. Their costumes and how they fight. I could honestly see, like, at least several spin-offs of this Black Panther film with, like, these characters or something, because they're very entertaining in themselves, and they're also, once again, work dramatically, like I mentioned earlier, as part of the screenplay. Because dramatically, if you don't feel for these characters, then a lot of what this film has to offer in its theme and tone kind of fails. But because the performances are so good, and because you recognize the stakes and what's at hand, you really do get into this film even more. I would say I was fairly riveted throughout the film. And even Daniel Kaluuya, coming from Get Out playing Wakabi, his character, who at first I thought just like from promotional stuff, like is kind of more secondary kind of character, he actually goes through a few changes in a character arc that took me by surprise, because I was honestly just expecting just a side character, but he actually had a little bit more to offer that I really liked. And even Martin Freeman playing Everett Ross, coming from Civil War, definitely not anyone's favorite from Civil War, obviously, but when he shows up in this film, I was really just praying like, please don't be annoying, please don't be annoying, and he wasn't. He was actually along for the ride in a good, pleasant way, where he actually had a couple good lines in there, and he also served a purpose to the plot, and he wasn't just like, hey, what do I do? Oh, nothing, just be funny? Okay. He actually does serve a purpose in the overall film, and that's good that they didn't just waste him. And also, it's a good way to just carry on his character from Civil War instead of just kind of leaving him there. Also, of course, if you've seen the trailer, you know there's a scene where he and Andy Serkis are in the same room, and oh my god, it's like The Hobbit! And speaking of Andy Serkis, he returns as Ulysses Klaue from Age of Ultron, who in Age of Ultron is just kind of just this guy who's greedy and wants money because he has vibranium. In this one, they really do play up the comedy that Ulysses Klaue has to offer, and I think Andy Serkis pulled it off very well just from his voice and his creepy Gollum facial expression, and he has a really cool robot vibranium arm that also just kind of elevates his character as more of a threat. Even though he is kind of goofy and comedic, you look at his weapons and what he can do, and it's like, okay, he is still a threat, although he is pretty funny too. And speaking of funny, Letitia Wright playing Shuri, the sister of T'Challa, I thought she was also very good in this film. She makes one joke, I won't say what it is because it's something you really just gotta kind of have to hear yourself. She says a joke that is in reference to a dead meme. That's all I'll say. I did not laugh at that. I thought it was kind of cringy. But other than that, every other joke that she told I thought landed pretty well. And she can also have some action moments where she's throwing down. Once again, I could see a movie about her happening because she has a good personality, a good performance, a likable character who's basically the Q of this film, because this movie has some spy movie elements, and you have this James Bond kind of Q-esque scene where he's going around and looking at the improvements to his suit and weapons, and she's kind of like the Q in that. A little bit more of a funnier Q, though. And that was something I was kind of worried about, too, because in the trailer you see that his suit is, like, in a necklace now. He puts on the necklace and, like, his suit just kind of transforms around him. I was a little worried about that, but I actually thought it was perfect, and it also just makes sense because Wakanda is this advanced race, and you see all this advanced technology, and it just kind of makes sense that the suit would be just like that. But by far, though, the best character in this film, for me, Michael B. Jordan as Erik Killmonger. He almost stole the show for me. Like, I loved him as a villain. I don't know if I can say better than Loki, because Loki's been around for a considerable amount of time, so it's just kind of hard to differentiate, like, which one is better. Loki, who has had the most screen time, or Killmonger, who has had quite a journey in this film on its own, and it's just one movie. This is a villain who has a story. He has motivations, and though you may not agree with them, though it's definitely bad guy motivation, you understand where the character is coming from. They explore his past, and you immediately kind of recognize, like, okay, I get it now. I may not agree with you, but I can sympathize with you, and I can understand that. And there are also some moments where near the end of the movie, maybe you might shed a tear for old Killmonger. I was kind of close, honestly, and that's also just a great attribute to Michael B. Jordan's performance. The dude got jacked for this. Like, he looked bigger than he usually... Like, I know he's, like, a buff dude, but he looked bigger than he normally does. Like, maybe that's just me. Maybe it was the makeup that they put on him, but, like... The dude is big, and that's really good to see him just dedicate himself to this role that did require some physicality here and there. But like I said earlier, it's not just a villain who wants to just fight people and blow things up and kill everyone. This is a villain who has a message to spread, something that comes from his own ideology. that I thought was really fascinating, and it also reflects on the heroes. The heroes listen to this villain, and they kind of reflect on themselves, and it's the kind of drama that I really love. It's something that I really appreciate about this film's screenplay. However, I will say there are a few moments where these character things kind of do feel a little bit rushed. Not every character, and I'm not going to really say who because it's not really worth mentioning too much about, but there are just these few moments where I felt like, that felt a little rushed by. And this is where we're going to dive into a little bit more of my cons with the film. There are a few moments of visual effects that I thought were kind of bad. And it's not the whole movie. Like I said earlier, there's a really great visual style to this film that I really loved. But there's these creatures running around. I won't say which ones, but for the most part, they're pretty good. Then action kind of starts, and they get a little too rubbery, cartoony, and there's also a portion of the final fight, not the whole final fight, but there's a portion of the final fight, the CGI looks so bad. And it's not like one of those things where it's like, well, it's kind of passable, you can tell it's CGI, but you can still watch it like, it's just kind of bad. Luckily, though, the characters are still interesting in it, and the story and drama is still there for me to be interested in and see how it's going to end. But there is that factor of what I'm looking at is not real, and I was kind of hoping, especially because Ryan Coogler did Creed, a little more down-to-earth, intense kind of final fight for that portion at least. I also thought that after maybe the first 10 minutes or so, I was getting really into the movie. They had some really good establishing scenes of where else the story is going to go, and then they dedicate a few minutes to T'Challa actually going through the rituals of becoming the king, and though I see where these things kind of went off to as far as the rest of the story, and I do like where it went, when I was watching it, it did have that feeling for me of okay, it's kind of dragging a little bit. I think it can pick up just a little bit more. Overall, though, I had a really fun time with Black Panther. I think the performances were all very good. I think this world, Wakanda, was fully fleshed out, fully realized in the best way possible. There's a great dramatic sense for the characters that makes you latch onto them even more, and even other characters besides Black Panther don't just fall by the wayside. They're actually very interesting and funny in some ways, and Michael B. Jordan plays the best villain that the MCU has seen since the Vulture, I guess, in Spider-Man Homecoming. In fact, I think Killmonger is better than the Vulture. The action scenes are a lot of fun, the visual style is there, though there are a few moments where the visual effects kind of drop off. The movie does drag for about, I guess if I had to estimate, maybe 10-15 minutes or so, and as I mentioned earlier, there are a few things character-wise that felt just a tad bit rushed. Overall, though, had a great time with this film. I'm gonna give Black Panther a B+. This is another Marvel film that I think is very enjoyable. I can't wait to see what else they do with Wakanda, especially in the sense that Infinity War is coming very soon, and I want to see how Wakanda is going to factor into that. I also love how this movie kind of stands on its own too. There's a few references to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, but while I was watching the film, there weren't any big references to things to come or anything like that, and that's something you can kind of admire too, is that even though it fits into this long-going storyline, you can kind of take this film out and just watch it as its own thing and not need to know anything else about the MCU to enjoy it. But anyways, if you've seen Black Panther, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.